Welcome to today's webinar, which is brought to you by Shared Services Link in association with TradeShift. Today, we are looking at 7 crucial things that you need to know about Peppol. My name is Susie West. I'm the founder and CEO at Shared Services Link. And have we got the lineup for you today? We have Didier Lombard. Didier is very knowledgeable in the world of e-invoicing and Peppol. He is very much an OpenPeppol expert and represents Lombard Consulting. With him, we have Julien Gobier, who is a Peppol project manager at Babelway, which is a TradeShift company, and Dan Young, who is head of pre-sales and value engineering at TradeShift as well. So great to have these gentlemen with us on the line today. You have a significant role as well to make sure that you get the most out of this next hour that you possibly can. I'm sure you've got lots of questions. Post those questions through to me on the GoToWebinar panel, and I will put your questions to our 3 presenters in the last 10 minutes of this webinar. You will probably want to share these slides with your colleagues. The slides will be made available after the webinar, so feel free to share them. And let's jump straight into the context and talk about why are we having this conversation today. Well, if you are affected by VIDA, which I'm sure you are, and also just international mandates, then chances are you will find yourself exploring Peppol, the subject of Peppol. And Peppol can be incredibly confusing for anyone because it seems to be an interesting mix of technical elements, regulatory, and also business process. We ask ourselves, is Peppol a file format? Can you just send your invoices straight to Peppol? Is Peppol a platform? Peppol is international, but does that mean it's the same kind of brand or same flavor in each country? Or is it ever so slightly different? You might ask yourself, isn't Peppol more for B2G? Does it really affect me because I'm more B2B? So what we'll be doing in this webinar is really addressing all of these questions and more. We are going to be diving into 7 crucial areas that you really need to know about Peppol, and we are revealing what those 7 are right from the get-go. So we're going to be talking about what Peppol is and is not, how the Peppol framework enables structured, secure data exchange across borders, the difference between 4 and 5 corner models, the role of OpenPeppol, national Peppol authorities and certified access points, how Peppol fits in to regulatory mandates in right across different regions and different countries, key updates on formats and PINT, and what is coming next and how you can prepare. So before I hand over to our first speaker, Dan, I've got 2 poll questions that I would like to ask you. I encourage participation as much as you possibly can. And just a reminder for those of you that are not so sure, we do share the results live after each poll. How would you describe your level of understanding of Peppol today? Would you say it's very limited? Would you say you have a basic understanding but you want more depth? Would you say it's actually very good but there are some knowledge gaps? Or would you say it is excellent and you just want to stay on top of the latest information? We're at 55% of you responding. If you haven't already responded, please do so. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at those results. We are at 66% of you responding, and we've got a great turnout today. So these are great numbers. So thank you for participating in that poll. Just shy of 50% of you say that you have a very limited understanding. And really, most of you who are left have a basic understanding but want more depth. A few of you say that you have a very good knowledge, and 1% of you, well done, you have an excellent knowledge and you're just wanting to stay very much up to date. So thank you. That gives our presenters a good read of who we've got on the line. So next poll coming up on your screen now. Where are you on your e-invoicing journey today? Would you say that you have a mature e-invoicing program and you're working with providers, you've got a nice mature relationship with them? Maybe you are looking to enhance or expand your e-invoicing program right now. maybe you're about to implement your e-invoicing project right now, or are you just in the researching stage? So we're on about 44% of you responding. If you haven't already done so, please tick the box that's relevant to your situation. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results coming up on the screen now. So 24% of you are mature, 32% of you are looking to enhance or expand, and 30% of you are about to implement e-invoicing, and 14% of you are just researching. So thank you so much for participating in the polls. We've got a few more coming up later on, but for the time being, let's hand over to Dan. Over to you, please, Dan.
Thank you, Susie. So I'm going to kick things off today by asking everybody to consider why interoperability matters. I've worked in the kind of accounts payable transformation space for about 20 years in different organizations. You know, that particular area of transformation is very mature, it's very commoditized. I'd imagine that most people on the call today have invested heavily in accounts payable transformation of some kind, and indeed the poll seemed to imply that roughly 24% have invested in this space, or e-invoicing in general. But today I think the real challenge companies need to solve for go beyond kind of your own back office transformation needs, and they bleed into interoperability. And digitization inside your own enterprise and in your back office and in your accounts payable and accounts receivable team, it only gets you so far in terms of business improvement and automation. If your back office systems can't seamlessly connect with your customers, with your suppliers, and increasingly, as we see with tax authorities, the value that you're going to get from those systems is going to be limited. So it's really interoperability that transforms technology from being a barrier into being a bridge. And this is the ability for systems and processes and organizations to connect and effectively speak the same language. Without it, collaboration and innovation is limited, but with it, your investments in your systems and that innovation can accelerate. And when it comes to finance and procurement transformation across borders and industries and governments, what we're seeing is that Peppol has emerged as a gold standard, making real interoperability not just possible, but practical and also easily accessible because it's been around for so long. The real power of interoperability is that it creates almost like a network effect. And as someone who's worked for a B2B network provider for about 10 years now, this is really important to me in the organization I worked for, because every new participant strengthens the whole ecosystem. It makes the connections more valuable, it makes them more efficient and more trusted. And this is especially really critical today because supply chain relationships are continuously changing, compliance requirements are accelerating, cross-border trade is expanding, and supply chains demand more and more end-to-end visibility. So you can think of interoperability as allowing organizations to solve for all of those challenges. And if you invest in this space, it's future-proofing your business from what's coming next. So throughout the presentation, I'd like to ask you to think about interoperability, why it matters, and without it, are your back office systems fragmented? Can they talk to each other? Can you communicate effectively with your trading partners and have the ability to grow your business in new markets? Are you able to keep up with these sweeping compliance mandates? Are you getting the best out of your back office investment in accounts payable or accounts receivable transformation, that ROI? And also, do you have the transparency and visibility that modern supply chains demand in this particular space? So in today's presentation, Didier and Julien are going to go into a little bit more detail around Peppol, how it's becoming a de facto standard in terms of interoperability, how it aligns technology around standards, it aligns governance around security and compliance, and how it gives you the opportunity to scale your businesses in terms of global reach and cross-border trade. So I'm going to hand over to Didier now, who's actually going to do a bit of a deep dive into Peppol and a little bit about its history.
Yep, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Susie, for the words of introduction earlier on, and thank you all for joining this afternoon's webinar. And as I can see by the poll results that came in, that actually, in fact, there is not only is there lots of interest by the number of people that are on this webinar, but actually the level of knowledge is actually quite good. But there are some gaps, and my aim this afternoon is to help fill those gaps of knowledge in the Peppol, and also address perhaps some of those misconceptions about Peppol. So I'll be looking at sort of three things over the course of this presentation, talking about OpenPeppol itself, the Peppol network, and we'll also talk about the Peppol format itself. So as far as Peppol, what was the purpose of Peppol? So Peppol, and in fact Dan mentioned it as well, saying that interoperability, has always been an issue with service providers as they try and cross connect. And that is the whole reason why Peppol came into being, was to try and address interoperability by making it easier for service providers to interconnect, and by having a standard way of exchanging structured file formats using standard protocols. And that's been very successful and has grown. So two things about terminology. Peppol is the global ecosystem for the exchange of electronic invoices, and OpenPeppol is the name of the organization, which is a community-led, community member-led, not-for-profit international association based in Brussels. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but each of those is very important. The community are the ones who actually dictate the direction of Peppol. They are part of all the various separate communities and specialist committees that decide the direction of Peppol. Nothing happens in Peppol without the agreement of the whole community. And the fact that it's not for profit and is an international association gives it a sort of added sort of legal status, which means that actually it is not there for profit. It has members from over 44 countries around the world. So then perhaps just talking about the sort of historical background and development, it came out of a European initiative prior to 2012. Between the 2000s and the 2012, there was lots of initiatives going on in the digitalization space. A lot of electronic invoicing companies who were doing quite well, but all of those were mainly 2 or 3 corner models. And it was recognized again, that the cross connection between service providers, the interoperability, was something that needed to be addressed. And so the EU funded a large scale proof of concept, which eventually translated in 2012 to Peppol as we know it today. And Peppol remains, in those early stages, a joint effort between governments and private industries to improve this interoperability. And as we've mentioned, it has expanded, and I'll give you some stats in shortly, but Peppol has expanded into a globally recognized framework that supports this interoperability and interconnectivity. More and more countries are joining, be it from, in the EU from where it started, but of course in Asia Pacific, which is a big growth area, as well as UAE, and I will talk a little bit about some of those later on. But as far as the global reach is concerned, just to share some numbers with you, starting from the right-hand side, there are nearly 2 million receivers in the Peppol network. And a receiver is the buyer or seller on the network. And these are not necessarily members of Peppol, they are just the buyers and sellers. And then as we come from the right, you have 750 total number of OpenPeppol members, And these are mainly the service providers, include the Peppol authorities, but these are mainly the service providers who are the engine room, if you will, of the Peppol network. And then countries with OpenPeppol members, again, this goes far beyond Europe. There's now 44 countries who have Peppol members, and 23 of those countries have their own Peppol authorities. And a Peppol authority basically it runs the jurisdiction for Peppol in their own particular country. They assist in the enrolment, and they can stipulate some of their own regulations as far as technical requirements are concerned. Of course, once they have been shared and approved by the community, the wider community as well. I'd like to hand back to Dan just briefly before I go on to the next slide.
That's great. And just before, Dan, you pick up here, Didier, if I can just ask you just to move your microphone a little bit away from your mouth, please. Thank you. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, so thanks, Didier. I think it's fair to say, you know, Peppol has established itself as a really crucial framework for many countries to establish their e-invoicing mandates. And because it's been around since 2012, it's got a lot of thought leadership has gone into that to create the framework that exists today. So perhaps you could start us kicking us off by explaining the first of 7 crucial things that the audience might need to know about Peppol.
Yep, thank you very much, Dan. Yes, and the aim of this particular bit is to try and explain to you exactly what Peppol is and also what it's not. So one of the things, and I'll start, by in effect doing the key characteristics. So the first real message that I want to get across, and I've already done that, is that it is an open and global network. Open in the fact that it's very easy to join, global in that it goes beyond global. It goes beyond Europe. You will have heard of Peppol being pan-European public procurement online. That acronym is dead. It's very much a global network, and it is based currently on the 4-corner model. So the second sort of characteristic or core crucial thing that I wanted to get across is that it is a connect once, reach all. So that therefore means that it is a true network. Once you're in the network, then you can have access to everyone. Then the third one is to standardize data. It uses standardized data models for business documents. So and transport protocols and dynamic discovery addressing. So whilst that sounds a little bit complicated, it is actually relatively simple, particularly the dynamic discovery addressing process, which therefore means that it is very easy for people sitting outside Peppol and to see who is in Peppol. They can then join Peppol and they can discover who is in Peppol, who is their service provider, and what documents that service provider can process for that particular client. And then part of one of the fourth thing that I'd like to get across to you is the fact that although it's it is a network, it is an association, and it is not for profit. It still has a very fully legal and governance framework with its own regulatory compliance, which is fully transparent. All those are in open source. They're all available on the Peppol website, and that there makes it very visible to everyone who wants to join Peppol. And of course, the fifth point that I wanted to get across is the ease of adoption. It is very easy to join Peppol. Again, the website has all the information required from initial application through to obtaining test certificates to formal certification of service providers. And again, that is very transparent and it's the same for everyone. So all service providers, regardless of country, initially, the initial joining of Peppol is the same, but with some countries with added requirements if they have their own Peppol authority that are stipulating such requirements. And then the sixth one, a very important factor, is no cost to end users and minimal cost to countries who wish to implement the Peppol network using the business file formats that we've got at the moment, which are being improved with the Peppol international format. This is a much more flexible way to adapt to national legal requirements. So Peppol, and the final point I wanted to mention is that Peppol is a powerful and very practical tool ready for use in large-scale digital transformation projects. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute when I talk about the third and the four corner model. So I'd like now to hand over to Julia to talk about the Peppol framework in a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Didier. So indeed, as we are talking about framework, you need to see Peppol as both a communication protocol and standardized messages. So the protocol on which it is based to exchange the file itself is based on AS4, and you have standardized messages approved by OpenPeppol. These are called BIS document for business interoperability specifications. And it can be invoices, it can be orders, it can be dispatch advices. But here, what interests us the most indeed is the invoice process. So let's take off an example here with the image on the screen. Goal here is for company A, which is the supplier, to send a file to company B, which is the buyer. We talked a lot about the four corner model. So here we are. Corner one, which would be company A, in this case, the supplier. The corner two would be the sender access point, which would be the Peppol access point of the supplier. Corner three is the receiver Peppol access point, so the access point of the buyer. And corner four, in this case, in company B, is the buyer. So in the end, what does happen? The supplier, so the company A, sends the invoice to its Peppol access points, to its sender access point. Then, beforehand, the company B must have registered within Peppol. How do you register into Peppol? It's up to the receiver access point to perform that registration, which is usually based on some legal identifiers. For instance, in Belgium, you can use the company number or the Belgian VAT number. In Germany, they use Leitwig ID for government entities or for the VAT number for B2B transactions. Different identifiers can exist, GLNs also, etc. So you can see that a bit like the yellow pages. In the yellow pages, the company who wants to be called register its phone number into some kind of address book called the yellow pages, and then the person who wants to call will look into that yellow page and make the call to the correct number. It works a bit the same. So customer register into Peppol, and when the supplier sends its invoice to the sender access point, based on the content of the invoice where the legal identifier will be present, the sender access point can make a query into the Peppol registry. So imagine I'm trying to send a file to company B with identifier 123, and then Peppol will reply, okay, for this customer, you need to send the file to access point X, whatever. It replies with a URL to send the file to. And then the exchange of the files happen between the sender access point and the receiver access point. They basically shake hands, exchange the files, the receiver access point confirms he received the file, and the transaction is over. Afterwards, there is indeed a relationship between the receiver access point and the buyer, so that the file is transmitted from the receiver access point to the buyer into the way that they agreed together. So the core concept here is to know that Peppol is not a place where you drop files, where the receiver access point will pick up the files, etc. It's really a dynamic exchange between trusted access points. Access points such as Tradeshift can connect to that network and exchange files. These access points must comply with security protocols. They must ensure the message integrity and traceability, use unique identifiers for the participants, and all in all, this creates a secure exchange protocol between the different parties. So all in all, this is how the global four-corner model is working. I'm now handing it over to Susie for the next poll. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Julien. So if you could tick the box that's most appropriate to your situation, which of these best describes your organization's current status with Peppol? Would you say you're actively connected via a Peppol access point today? You're exploring Peppol adoption in the near future? You're aware of Peppol, but no immediate plans to connect via Peppol today? You're unsure what your status is, or maybe it's not that relevant to you right now. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results. Thank you. We got about 64% of you responding there. So coming up the results here, you can see that 38% of you are actively connected via a Peppol access point today. Just over a quarter of you are exploring Peppol adoption in the near future. 14% of you are aware, but no immediate plans to connect via Peppol. And 17% unsure, 6% not sure how it's relevant to you right now. So thanks for that. And let's move on to the next poll question that we've got, which is regarding countries. So tell us a little bit about which of the following countries are in scope for you. And please do select all that apply. Are you looking to go live in France next year, in Belgium as of the 1st of January, Poland in February, Germany, ongoing phased program there, or is Denmark of interest to you? So please tell us which of the following countries are in scope for you. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results. Again, coming up on your screen now. So we have some winners here, Belgium and France, followed by Germany, and then Poland and Denmark. So that's great. And over to you, please, Didier.
Yep, thank you, Susie, for that. And I'm just going to talk now a little bit about the difference between the 4 and 5 corner models. You would have heard from Julien, who spoke in a little more greater detail about the 4 corner model and how it actually works from a technical perspective. What I would like to do is just step back a bit and just talk about the evolution of the 4 corner model here. So just looking at there, just a sort of, it's slightly different. It's on its side as opposed to vertically, which was Julien's one. But you can see you've got your buyer and seller on the left-hand side, corner 1 and corner 2, and they send and receive their invoice data from corner 3 and corner 4, who are the certified service providers. And then in there you have the SML, SMP and the directory, and those are part of the yellow book, which actually sort of Julien described for discovering who is on Peppol, who is their service provider, and what file formats they look. But what I'd like to bring your attention to is the 2 words at the top of each of the blocks there, which are non-standardized and standardized. Peppol only regulates and determines what happens between service providers. It does not determine what happens between buyers and sellers and their respective service providers. So and that's a familiar misconception that I want to correct. And what that does mean is that service providers who will provide a translation service as required, but they will provide other services for their buyers and sellers in order to make sure that once they're exchanging between other Peppol certified providers, that they are doing so in accordance with the Peppol regulations and the Peppol agreed formats. So that is in the standardized box, which is on the right hand side. So this is electronic invoice, and this worked nice and dandy for many years. And then what then happened is that you have tax authorities who, separate to this, issued, required periodic and retrospective tax reports. And then it didn't take a genius to work out that actually why not leverage the electronic invoicing network of Peppol to also provide electronic data, tax data in real time. And so that's where the fifth model came into being, and that model, and you can see the word at the top of that box, is regulated. That's not regulated by Peppol, that is regulated by the tax authority of that country. So that is where you'll find that many countries will have their own rules as far as this is required. So the overall model that you can see there is the five-corner decentralized model. And decentralized model means there is no great big government infrastructure in order to sort of to manage this. What they do is they will probably choose a service provider to be their corner five to handle all of that tax information for them. So that's the four-corner model, and that's the five-corner model. How does this benefit? Well, the benefits for governments are they get real-time reporting. It also means, as I said, that because it's decentralized, there's no great big central infrastructure that they require to put in place. The data exchange is by certified service providers, and therefore they can governments can be fairly confident that they're getting accurate information. This also will encourage interoperations and supports cross-border information as well, so they can have clear visibility, which helps them address the VAT gap, which, despite the current reporting process, is still very large in a number of countries. Not all of it due to fraud, some of it due to mismanagement, but either way, that VAT gap needs to be addressed, and this is a good way for governments to look at addressing that particular gap. The benefits for taxpayers is that it enables AP and AR automation. It's usable for other documents as well, and of course, as is standard for Peppol, there is no lock-in as far as Peppol is concerned. So I'd like them to move on then, having talked about the four and five corner model now, to talk a little bit more about the role of the major stakeholders within Peppol and how they interact with each other. So let's look at the stakeholders in Peppol first. So there are three main stakeholders. You have the end users on the right there, and they are the buyers and sellers, and they are on the network. But they're not, do not have to be members of Peppol per se. So they, as we said, they send their information or receive information via the service providers, which is the central pillar here, who are the engine room. They run the network, if you will. They provide the business interoperability, in effect, between the end users. And the service providers become certified Peppol access points by going through that certification process, which I mentioned earlier. And then the final stakeholder, and this is very much a growing number. I mean, they're all growing, but what is particularly interesting is that Peppol authorities who are manage the jurisdiction and enrollment of Peppol service providers in their own countries, they are beginning to grow in numbers as they have realized A, the advantages of Peppol, and B, their wish and desire to control some aspects of Peppol, like, for instance, additional technical requirements, or perhaps an additional certification process as part of enrolling for those various countries. And again, all those additional requirements do need to be approved by Peppol and by the Peppol community. And then the next one I wanted to talk about is really the three pillars. We've had the three stakeholders, stovepipes of stakeholders, but the three pillars. So again, on the left-hand side here, you have the specifications. That is very much the bedrock is the business interoperability specifications, which Julien spoke briefly about, and that governs all the document types and content and file formats that service providers are allowed to exchange, on the network. Currently, the network architecture is a four-corner model, and only certified Peppol certified service providers are allowed to exchange those documents on the network. And then finally, you have the governance pillar, which they determine the legal agreements, the policies, and the procedures between the various stakeholders. And this defines the rules on which Peppol actually activity is undertaken. And again, those governance rules, all those, the managing committee and all the various other committees within Peppol are all members of Peppol. The Peppol operating office is a relatively small organization that actually just runs the technical support and some of the operational aspects of Peppol. But as I said and underlined, the most important thing, one of the most important things about Peppol is that it is very much community-led. So I'd like to move on a little bit now and just introduce how Peppol fits into the mandates in the EU and in also Asia Pacific. I know Julien will also pick up on this in a minute, but what I just wanted to sort of highlight are a couple of points. Firstly, European adoption. This is indeed where Peppol started, and not totally surprising. That's where it is strongest at the moment, particularly in the Scandinavian countries where it all started. There is a significant volume that goes through there, but it is very present in Europe, and we'll go into talk in other countries in Europe as well. Asia Pacific has probably seen is the region which has seen the largest growth in more recently, with countries signing up to become Peppol authorities and drive government mandates in various sectors. And also, I think what's important to realise that whilst in many regions Peppol is not mandated, but Peppol is very much part of the networks and the options that governments allow, certainly in public sector. And then just perhaps going into a couple more regions in a bit more detail, perhaps just underlying the EU, for instance, Belgium will be mandating Peppol from the 1st of January 26, unless there is some method, on a bipartisan basis for not using. Asia Pacific there, you can see the countries there are very much engaged. Each of those countries have their own Peppol authorities, which means that they are very much engaged in both the enrolment of suppliers in those of service providers in those countries, as well as, of course, suppliers and buyers, and making sure encouraging people to use Peppol as much as possible. And the other country I wanted to sort of just highlight is the Middle East, which is now a growing area. The UAE launches a mandatory e-invoicing program from July 26, and they have gone down the system of actually putting in electronic invoicing and digital and also tax reporting at the same time, using a Peppol 5-corner model. And Peppol, it will be mandated as the only way of exchanging electronic invoices. So UAE will be the example and the beacon method of using Peppol for the future. So I'd like to hand over back to Julien just to talk a little bit more about some countries and also some technical updates.
Yeah, thanks, Didier. So we talked a lot about the BIS, business interoperability specifications. We are currently on the version 3, billing 3.0. So also, if you see on the right frame, there is a release each and every 6 months to update the validation artifacts of the BIS. Which basically changes or added codes to code lists, add or remove some validation rules, etc. So it's important to be up to date to ensure the validation artifacts are always used to validate the files. Because indeed it's something that we did not mention yet, but it's the responsibility of the sender of the files to always ensure the files that you send to the receiver access point are always valid files against the latest validation artifacts. So in regards to also what Didier mentioned is that there are lots of movements into Peppol in the European Union, especially in the four mentioned countries here. So in Belgium, indeed, there is a mandate for 1st of January 2026, where all domestic B2B invoices will need to be exchanged through Peppol, and the Belgian Peppol authority choose to use the Peppol BIS 3 format to be exchanged over Peppol. For Poland, there has been a new phase that will roll out beginning of February 2026. For all that will relate to B2G transactions, billing 3.0 can still be exchanged, but for B2B transactions, all invoices will need to be in a so-called FA3 format, which is a dedicated format for Poland, and will need to flow through the KSEF platform, which is a specific platform developed by the Polish government. France became lately a Peppol authority itself. So the French tax authority became Peppol authority on the 8th of July in 2025. So this move is a critical step in France to establish Peppol as a key interoperability channel between the different parties that will exchange the files for e-invoices. And the latest countries we wanted to mention as well is in Germany. So in Germany, there has been 2 formats, and there are still 2 formats that are promoted by the government, which are the X-Rechnung format and the billing 3.0. Now they have incorporated national rule sets into Peppol BIS 3 and German X-Rechnung, so that now these formats are content equivalent, meaning that normally the same mandatory information should be present in both of those format files. So in regards to the PINT, so what does PINT introduces? So PINT stands for Peppol International Invoicing. They implemented wide-scale scheme specifications. What does it mean? When we explained about looking into the Peppol registry, you need to look for an identifier for your customer, but also what type of format your customer is supporting. Does it support BIS 3? Does it support X-Rechnung? Whatever. In the end, the PINT is meant to develop some kind of more global format. Imagine there would be a BIS Europe format and some subsets with BIS Germany, BIS Belgium, all these kinds of subsets that could maybe exist in the future. Your customer will maybe declare, okay, I'm able to receive the BIS Europe format, but you can only create or send BIS German format. But as your customer supports all the different subsets that are below the BIS Europe format, you would be able to send your file to that customer. So the key concept here for this PINT is to wider the use of Peppol, and to not just stick to exact match for format delivery. So also, what has been the latest specifications regarding PINT in the other countries? In Japan, they also released a PINT Japan format to have their specifications aligned with the Japanese qualified invoice system. In United Arab Emirates, the PIN specification will now include the specific rules for the UAE's tax system, and Australia and New Zealand have migrating all their existing specification and business rules into a PIN framework so that they are able to work on a worldwide scale while retaining their unique local requirements. And the last crucial thing we want to mention about is what's coming next now for Peppol and how should you prepare. So the next big step, and it's arguably one of the most important, it has been mentioned by Didier, is the introduction of the VIDA project, so the VAT in the digital age. Which basically introduces the fifth corner model with governments collecting tax reporting. It's set to be launched around 2030. We know, for instance, that in Belgium they want to implement some kind of tax reporting as well, beginning of 2028. The model in France will be based on a fifth corner model. So this is what's coming next. Also, there will be a new release cycle as each and every 6 months for the BIS billing tree. The new mandates, as we mentioned, for Belgium, 1st of January 2026, but I guess most of you are already aware of that. It will concern all B2B transactions for companies that are subject to VAT. In France, there is an interoperability testing phase that is planned for October 2025. And the goal is to make a full launch of the B2B invoicing mandate in September 2026. And also Poland confirmed that indeed there would be a phased rollout starting February 2026. On the side, the Peppol network itself is being modernized. So there has been a DNS migration project to enhance the network performance and the quality and security of the network. And there is also the introduction of the message level status, which is basically a way to inform the sender access point of the status of the message that is being delivered from corner 3 to corner 4, because currently there is no dynamic and direct view on what happens to the file between corner 3 and corner 4. The introduction of the message level status is to palliate this gap. So how should you prepare? Most of you are already equipped with a Peppol access point, as we see in the poll, but for the other ones, get equipped. It's the key concept here is to start looking for a Peppol access point. Stay ahead, monitor what's coming up around Peppol. As said, there are 6 months release. There are released every 6 months, so maybe there are things that are concerned that will concern you on the traffic you are expecting. Upgrade your system to be able to comply with the mandates. Strengthen your data, because depending on the traffic you're going to have, if you're exchanging files cross borders, if you exchanging file in countries that require mandate, ensure that you are able to produce and deliver the data that are required by the mandate, whether it's on the receiving side or on the sending side, and leverage to PINT. PINT will be the main trend for the coming years. So be ready to leverage PINT on your side. So I'll hand it over back to Dan for the closing slides, I guess.
Yeah, so before we get to questions, and I encourage everybody, if you have any questions, to start thinking of them now. Just a little bit about TradeShift, which is an organization that's been around for about 15 years now. And we started off with effectively an ambition to connect every company in the world through digital electronic invoicing and meeting different compliance needs. So we've been doing that for a long time. We have a strong pedigree in this space. We're actually present in about 190 countries in terms of organizations connecting and transacting with their supply chains. And importantly, through the BabbleWay platform, we've been a certified OpenPeppol access point for over 10 years now. As a network, as an ecosystem, you know, we transact over 10 million documents every month, and on top of that, over 1.5 million invoices and documents and transactions are passed through TradeShift through our certified Peppol access point capability. So if you have any questions about Peppol integration or more broadly about interoperability, we'd be happy to field those questions. Feel free to reach out after this session. And if you're interested in becoming Peppol ready, we can have you ready in just a few days through our services team. Over to you, Susie. Are there any questions that the team?
Great, there are many questions. So thank you to Dan, Didier and Julia. Lots of questions coming through. And whilst we kick off with our questions, final poll coming up on your screen now, please. What would you like to do next in terms of follow-up? Would you like to have a bit more of a detailed call with an expert like we've had on the line today? Would you like to have a demo of the TradeShift and BabbleWare technology to see how you might be able to use it as an access point in any of the countries that you're looking to have on your roadmap? Would you like more information on Peppol, or would you like more information on TradeShift as a possible access point for you? Right, let's have a look at some of these questions. I'm going to leave that poll open, so take your time there. Right. So I'm going to start with this question here. And I'm going to throw it open to all of you. If we already have an account with TradeShift, which is required today for NHS invoices, do we need to adjust it to be able to use Peppol? Who'd like to take that one?
My TradeShift colleagues, no?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably for Julia or Dan.
Yeah, so yeah, in terms of your integration needs, we want that to make as seamless as possible for any organizations that you're connected to across the TradeShift network. If you're already connected to your suppliers across TradeShift, there's actually a slightly different integration that might need to be implemented to redirect some of that traffic through a Peppol access point instead. So we can actually mobilize those that redirection of traffic through our Peppol access point connectors just in a matter of days. So I think it's better, but in answer to your question, there's likely a small reconfiguration needed, but not a significant one, and we can work with you to put that in place.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just pick up on that one as well, Susie? I mean,
sure, please.
Just to emphasize, if you are an access point, you know, if TradeShift's an access point in the UK, they are an access point basically for the whole network. You know, if a service provider says, you know, it maybe ask the question, do I need to set up another access point in France or another access point in Australia? They can use exactly the same access point. So it's all to do with a connect once and access all approach.
Great, thank you for that, Didier. So is the Peppol registry, so the SML, accessible to the public? Could companies use an API to validate the Peppol identifier their partner sends them to be sure there was no mistake made? That's one for you, maybe, Didier or Julien.
Julien may know more. My understanding is, I'm not sure about an API, but it's certainly accessible on the via the internet. They may be able to set up an API. I'm not sure, Julien.
Yeah, so there is an API you can call to make queries on the SML, and also there are some artifacts based on regex that allows you to validate the identifiers you're using. For instance, in Belgium, you need to have a 10-digit identifier, etc. For GLNs, it's 13-digit, some things like that. So these are there are artifacts existing to help you validate, and there are indeed APIs to call to ensure that your customers are on Peppol or not.
Right. Okay, thank you. Is there a competing initiative to Peppol? How is it connected to US stakeholders? Didier, should we start with you on that one?
Yes, yeah. I think that that's referring to the DMB network, which is an American almost a Peppol twin organization, and the answer is absolutely. We are working with them, and they are working with us on an interoperations basis. And you know, I suspect the background of the question is, you know, how does Peppol interact with other networks? And the answer is it does and it can. You know, and that is something which is being looked at.
Great. I'm going to ask Julian the next one. It's a bit more Poland specific. You mentioned Poland. Could you confirm if FA3 complies with EN 16931? Additionally, can Polish, shall we save that one for later?
Yeah, the thing is that I recall that FA2 was not. FA3 should be, but I cannot put my hand on the fire on this one. But I guess it's meant to be, but I cannot confirm 100% on that one.
Okay. There's more to the question, but I think we'll
does not comply with 16931.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit more about the validation rules companies need to comply with? I mean, I think that's a massive conversation.
Yeah,
any comments on that?
Yeah, so there are indeed tons of different validations. You have also country-specific validations depending on national laws and national requirements. So indeed, it's a bit technical to go into these details, but the key point here is that, as I mentioned, the sender of the file needs to ensure the file are valid. It's the role of your access point to validate those files and to ensure that what you provide is valid against the format you're trying to send over Peppol. So that's why some countries created their own dedicated format, is to have the hand on those validations. But the trend now is to trying to put those national rules into standardized European format, so that a single validation artifact can validate against many country specifications.
Thank you. Somebody's asking, and just a kind of confirmation, I think this came up, is KSEF in Poland connected to Peppol? I think we've touched on all of that. So I think let's move to confirm if a buyer based in Peppol mandatory countries purchases goods from a supplier in a non-mandatory country/company, does the supplier still need to comply with the buyer's country Peppol requirements?
So for this, mainly the current mandates, especially for instance in Belgium, these are only for domestic invoices, meaning it's invoices sent between two companies in the same country. So all the requirements, the mandates that are currently in place are usually for domestic traffic. For all that relates to cross-border, so from a supplier from country A to country B, it really depends on the will of the buyer. If the buyer requires you to send you the invoices over Peppol, you can, but normally it's not mandatory yet. I guess it will be in some future with the fifth corner model mentioned by Didier as well. And especially for the VIDA initiative, but currently it's normally not mandatory, but again depends on the scope, if it's also B2B or B2G. So some governments are inquiring to have mandatory invoices for B2G, even if it's from abroad.
I think in some countries for international billing, there's a separate process whereby the receiving company almost has a self-billed invoice with the tax authority to register the transaction. and we do support those flows in the TradeShift solution as well. So
great.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of this webinar. So huge thanks to our presenters today, Didier, to Dan, to Julien. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure working with you three. Great knowledge and great experience. So thank you. And thank you to everybody for attending today. We had great numbers and for participating in all of the polls as well. Just flagging actually 8 exciting webinars that we've got scheduled coming up for you to make note of and to share with your colleagues and to attend. And if you would like to just take a photo of this QR code and share any views that you've got of this webinar or of other things that Shared Services Link has been providing for you, that would be greatly appreciated. And ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to welcoming you next time. Thank you so much for your attention today and good luck with your e-invoicing initiative. Goodbye.